Hey, welcome back to another episode of Prop Talk, the Property Masters Guild official podcast. I'm Brett Elliott here with Scott Buckwald, and I am so excited for our guest. I can't believe he agreed to do this. We have with us today writer and director and ex-stuntman Garrett Warren, who is somebody I've known, 10 years now, maybe?
At least.
Something like that. I'm just going to go over just a little bit of what he's done. I mean, the new movie that's not out yet that you've just directed and are polishing up is called Painter. When it shows up, I recommend everybody check it out, because if it came from Garrett, it's going to be quality. But just to put a few things out there that you might have recognized, and in no particular order, Garrett as a stunt coordinator doing Avatar 1, 2, and 3, Logan, which is one of my favorites, Alice in Wonderland, which is I think where I first met you, Real Steel, Alita Battle Angel, F1 that I didn't know about. I'm so jealous on that one. I didn't know about that until I just looked it up, and of course Roadhouse, which is just such a showcase for your talents.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. You know, what's funny about the list, F1, I worked 1 week.
Oh, just one? Okay.
And I was basically, the stunt coordinator on that, Gary, is an amazing man. Love him to death. And I think I was up for an award with him.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, why? What? I came in. So Brad was with Team Porsche over here, over at the racetrack.
Okay.
And out in, Irwindale or wherever we were.
We're talking about
F1.
me, Brad Elliott.
No,
we're
Brad
talking
Pitt.
about
Brad Pitt.
Mr. Brad Pitt.
So he was driving the cars, and they just needed a stunt coordinator because insurance, number one, and because I was going to do absolutely nothing. Team Porsche. No, I'm serious. Team Porsche. First of all, that car is so advanced. It's like a spaceship.
Yeah.
I have no clue, and I don't think many stunt people do either. How to work one of those vehicles or be safe around it. We pretty much take a back seat. However, in the movie industry, you need to have a stunt coordinator because that is past experience and so forth. So I was basically there, in whatever capacity they needed.
Sure.
However, I didn't do shit on that movie, and
why did they come to you for that?
Well, first of all, the producer is a really good friend of mine. He's used me for years. I did a lot of Steven Spielberg movies with him. And, for this one, they also knew that I don't have an ego. I'm not going to be pissed off for being brought in as, someone's stand-in, as a stunt coordinator stand-in. And I also, I actually did a talk at the Academy with the stunt coordinator because I was asking him about a James Bond movie one time when I was doing something at the Academy. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's brilliant. And, I think that they say, okay, well, here's a guy that he's going to say okay to. And I'm going to be the kind of guy that goes, look, I didn't have anything to do, guys. I didn't do that. There's a lot of stunt people out there, and I'm sure you guys know this, I'll do a movie, and all of a sudden there's a list of people on my, IMDb saying that they worked on that movie.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
No,
and
that pops up a lot, doesn't it?
And it pisses you off.
Happens in all departments.
There is a lot, and I found this more and more, but I haven't been looking for it. There's a lot of stolen valor in this
100%.
industry.
And for me, I get it. People are trying to just build a resume so that they can get hired. I get it. But at the same token,
you're going to get called on that, and that's embarrassing.
Yeah, and in my industry, look, as a stunt person, it's a small world, as well as you guys. But, you can't hold your head up high once you've done that. And so, when I got called from him and SAG was saying, oh, we're going to put you up for like the SAG Awards, right? I was like, why? I didn't have anything to do with it. And I wanted to make sure that the whole world knew I had nothing to do with it. I was there, I was there basically to help someone make sure that, it was just safe.
Yeah.
So
and that's always something I've appreciated about you in all the projects that I've been fortunate enough to see you work on, is that you really do prioritize safety. Because and I don't want to be an authority on the history of stunt work in this industry, but it seemed like in the 60s through the 80s it was real cowboy times, and it was just I'll do that.
I just worked with Steve Boyum.
Steve is a good guy.
And Steve was the cowboy in the 70s. He was he directed a couple episodes of The Old Man, which I worked on. And Steve was fantastic, but he was so old school, and it was a pleasure to be around Steve.
But now it's you apply so much science and technology, and even on the set of Avatar with these huge gear things that will decelerate people or yank people with a ramp up. And I mean, you've really, at least it feels like you guys are much more technically based and scientists, as well as people who are happy to
and that's happened
throw
to
your
us
body
as well.
down the stairs.
It's true. I have to admit, in the stunt industry right now, I think it's the safest time it ever has been. And yet we also have a number of stunt people that get into this business that don't know what it's like to hit the ground for real sometimes. Because we live in a padded world that can be painted out nowadays. When I came into this business was the 90s. I came in 1990, and we weren't able to paint out wires or pads at that time. It was somewhere in the middle of the 90s where we started putting taking out thin wire, making it thicker, and letting people paint it out.
Yeah.
And that was just like, whoa, what is this? And then Spectra came in. We were putting rope on people, and that was getting painted out. So we were nut up or shut up, back in the day. And I loved it because, you pretty much just have to just take the hit, be happy with it, don't say a word, and if you have to go to the hospital, you do it quietly.
That was your job.
Get up
that
and
was
do
it
again.
But nowadays, it's a bigger deal. And if there's not a pad on the ground, some people will be like, well, why can't we put a pad on the ground? You're like, really?
Yeah.
Dude, you got to stop that. You're a stunt person.
Because your job is here to take a fall.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna talk down about the stunt industry. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we have a generation of stunt people, much like we have a generation of kids that don't know how to cursive write anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But think how much different when you started in the 90s, how different the stunt work would have been having worked stunts in the 40s or 50s, where you didn't even have the wire.
Dude, let me tell you something. Looking back at the 40s and 50s, how people, and I guarantee they died and we don't know about it.
Sure.
There's some wagon turnovers and some westerns where I'm like, there's no way those people survived.
Yeah.
And if they did, then those guys are just rock solid superheroes that are just made out of concrete. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think that we live in a great day when it comes to the movie industry. It's completely changed. We're in a flux right now. However, when it comes to safety, there's not a whole lot you can do to hurt someone anymore. You can definitely make sure that people are safe. And if you're a stunt coordinator and you don't feel that this person can handle it, you can call, no good, no joy.
Yeah.
And, we live in a day and age where the people have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think especially dealing with guns, too, because this is a very closely related thing. Stunt people and guns. Property masters are in charge of safety on set there. And I don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I have a different opinion about guns on sets, personally.
Yeah.
I came up in a time where we didn't have... first of all, we were always safe. And now, don't get me wrong, I lived in the time when The Crow happened.
Yeah.
And then, of course... Rust happens, right? And people are sitting here going, how can something like this happen? And I'm saying to people that, it's not an industry practice.
Well, that's just it. Rust happened outside of all of what we, certainly in Los Angeles, and I think mostly around the world, will do to maintain gun safety. And, just like when you're doing your work, it's never safe, but there are very safe practices. Yeah. And I can say that I've overseen the safe discharge of, I don't know how many tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition, and really never had any close calls with anything.
I've never had anything come close to a close call in 30 years.
Yeah.
And what people lose sight of is because it's tragic, it makes the news. You don't hear about the day-to-day use of all from smallest handguns to machine guns that go off without a hitch, because it's what we do.
Yeah.
Right. But I do feel that we have gone too far.
I agree.
I feel that, safety protocols are great. I agree with their safety protocols. However, those safety protocols were already in place. Mm-hmm. You guys were already doing safe work already. Back in the day, before you gave me a gun, most people used to shine a light through it and hand it to me.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's new. Right. However, nowadays, you have to make an announcement. You have to take some time. You have to make sure everyone's happy with it. Are you okay with it? Are you okay with it?
Yeah.
And now I've wasted probably, an hour out of my day. And an hour out of my day when it comes to someone who's doing a first time movie, is a lot of time. And I don't think that, I'm going to say, no, we shouldn't have safety protocols. But I am going to say that, there is a certain time where, the trust that I do put in you, I hired the right people for the right job, has to be, given the right amount of breath. I have to say, yes, these people know what they're doing. I know that no matter what, they're not going to hand a gun out to someone that did. Look, before Rust happened on Avatar, you would never hand someone a bow just to hand them a bow. You were always very good about that. You'd say, here, let's do this first and make sure it's this kind of arrow. And where are you pointing the arrow? This is something you always did. But you didn't stop the day.
No.
And you didn't make an announcement.
If you do it right, you can do it efficiently. And thankfully, James Cameron was very supportive of making sure that I had the time and space to make it safe. Because in a situation like Avatar, when we're in the capture volume and we're using blanks for the verisimilitude for the actors, we have 12 witness cameras. And it's very difficult to get a clear firing line that isn't going to point a barrel at any of those guys. So we pushed them back, and they pushed back a little early on. But I was always very supported. And at the day that it all changed with witness cams is when I picked up a spent blank shell that was on the ground and a piece of the end of the shell, because they crimp these things down because there's obviously no bullet in it, and you have to keep the powder in, so they crimp the end of the blank down, and when that opens up explosively, it's a metal that's been stressed, and so there was a little chunk missing that was maybe 1/4 of an inch long, maybe 1/8 of an inch wide, and I brought that around to the camera people who were being the most who were giving me the most pushback on whether I needed to shove them back and put them on a longer lens or wrap them with a Fernie pad if they were wearing shorts. And I would show them this round, and I said, do you know where the piece of metal that's missing from this casing went? Because I don't know where it went, but I can tell you it went down the barrel.
But now here's my comment to that. I agree with you. However, you did that of your own accord. I don't even remember this happening.
No, because it was quick.
Right, but you didn't even stop. You didn't stop production.
No.
You didn't make a big deal out of it. You didn't yell at everyone. You didn't call wardrobe over. You didn't call. So one of the things that I appreciate about that is you handled your business properly, and it wasn't something that you did with, a time-consuming fanfare.
No.
And so the only thing I think about these days is that, look, guys, it's horrible what happened. I hope that never happens, and I pray it never happens. However, I do believe that, you guys have been professional way before this incident, and I trust that professionalism. The circumstances that allowed this to happen were not professional at all.
And that's what it was all about. It was about the circumstances.
Yeah. And to get on a movie like that, I mean, dude, I've gone to China. I've gone to India to work on films, and there is no safety protocols, and there's just like, you look around going, there's just no way this should be happening.
Yeah,
that's one of those sets that was going to happen on, and if I was working it, I'd be like, no.
You were talking about in the 40s, they used to employ sharpshooters. These are ex-military guys.
There's a great.
They would actually fire live rounds on set.
I think it was Public Enemy. James Cagney used to tell the story.
Yep.
He was on the Warner backlot, and when he's up against the building and the shots are going off around him, he said there were Army sharpshooters up on the buildings aiming at him.
Yeah.
And he kept saying to himself, boy, if I move a foot to the left or to the right, I'm done.
We know better now.
I've got something for you, though.
Yeah.
I was doing a movie called The New World, and it was Terrence Malick movie. And we had Indians and, of course, settlers there, and I was one of the settlers. And he was looking for guys. He was saying, okay, listen, will you be okay with putting a piece of wood on your chest? And we're going to fire an arrow.
We're going to shoot an arrow.
We're going to shoot an arrow into your chest. And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, it's not a real arrow. We're just going to put a screw in the tip of it. And I'm like, that's an arrow.
It's an arrow.
No, that's very old school. That's how it used to. That's how it used to be. You get hit by an arrow, they'd shoot you with an arrow.
100%. And then he's like, here, let's watch. And he's like, all right, which one of you stunt guys are the best? And he makes everyone line up to shoot. And I'm like, no, this has bad written all over.
You're just not a team player.
No, but I'm a team player. But it's like, guys, this has bad written all over it, right? And then he's like, all right, put the piece of wood on. And I'm like, and I'm like 1 foot away from it, and there's no way you can miss. But I'm like, dude, you can't do this.
There
I can't
are probably
run and
better
do this.
ways.
Yeah. So at that point, I said, I'd prefer if you just shot the freaking arrow at me and I try to catch it. As I'm, because God knows I could probably take the hit and jump backwards and make it look like it's getting into my chest and not worry about this thing piercing my skin as much,
Yeah, because what happens if they miss? A little bit to the left, a little bit to the right?
Well, good news for me.
And it's a screw.
A little too high, a little too low.
Well, the good news for me is that if it went a little too high, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
After Rust happened, I had a lot of people ask me, producers, how does this change my policy of weapons on set? What have I learned from it? And I said, I've learned absolutely nothing from it. I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've been doing. What should be learned is what they did, not what I'm doing.
Yeah, I also feel that, look, same thing with me and the Arrow. No, this doesn't feel safe. There's no reason for any of us to go, okay.
See something, say something.
Yeah.
It's a movie. Nobody needs to die.
Yeah. And
no one even needs to get hurt.
100%. I mean, look, there's a movie, was it Knight Rider, and people put a bed on tracks. No.
Yeah.
Are these tracks shut down? No. No.
There's a lot of common sense that doesn't always get applied. And unfortunately, this whole idea of cinematic immunity will be fine, don't worry about it, is just crap. And it's too bad. Yeah. And that's why I agree with you. I've had people say, what have you learned from it? And I said, I think that, it wasn't for something for me to learn from it. It's the people that didn't know that they were supposed to speak up. Mm-hmm. And also, it's a message to producers. And in my opinion, the thing that should be learned is hire experience. And don't mess around.
There you go. You don't hire to save money.
Yeah.
And it's even on less obvious. One thing I would bring up is for the prop master's role is I'm equally careful when it comes to food scenes. I will always talk to the actors to find out what their allergies are. My first day in pre-production, I hit up the entire cast and say, over the course of the movie, is there any food that you either aesthetically don't like having being put in front of you, or what are you allergic to?
Love it.
I don't want to give somebody peanuts and have them go into anaphylactic shock on set.
Yeah. See, love that. And also if they are, you never know. They could be vegetarian. They could be, whatever. And
could be a gluten intolerance.
Right.
Well, that's why I'll say.
But we ask.
And that's why I'll say aesthetics. Because if somebody's a vegetarian, I don't even want to put a cheeseburger in front of them if it's going to gross them out.
But at the same token, I have to admit, nowadays you can put a cheeseburger in front of people and it's still vegetarian and it looks like a cheeseburger.
Well, I know I have that option.
So to me, I think that what you're talking about is a smart idea. In the stunt world, we have to sometimes bridge the gap between things that are very iffy and wondering, like you can have a scene where someone's naked and running down a hallway. And, you don't necessarily want to be the person involved in it because there's an actress that's naked running down a hallway, but you're still a part of the safety process of it. And same thing with you guys, so we have to talk in a very, easy to understand way that, look, I don't need to be here if you don't feel I need to be here. And let me just do this the proper way. Tell me how you feel and where your safety levels are, and that's what you're talking about, which I think is great. Communication is probably the most important thing on a movie set, as we all know. I get that. I shouldn't have even brought it up. But I think that sometimes there's a lack of it.
Yeah. I'm going to change the subject a little bit here. You and I are probably unique in this room in that we both, in our pre-film industry days, we both have an aerobics video.
Yep.
And mine is languishing somewhere on VHS. I have to get it transferred at some point. And I've seen a clip of yours, and it's genius, I have to say.
I appreciate it.
The flowing red locks. It was inspiring.
So way back when I did do these videos, I had hair. And 2 eyes. And my hair was red. And I used to have curly. The back of my hair was all business.
It was gorgeous.
Was party in the back,
Well, so this leads into a question I like to ask everybody, which is sort of origin story. How did you get into this industry?
It's a prop show. Nobody cares about it.
No, everybody wants to know origin story.
I was in Boston, and I had come to California to help someone.
When is this? What?
So back in the late 80s, 89 or so, I was in Boston, and I was a martial artist, and I was a world champion and so forth. And a buddy opens up a gym here.
Just no big deal. I was a world champion. Yeah. No big deal.
Well, in the martial arts world, it's I have to admit, boxing, martial arts, there's always world champions. So if you just say, look, I was a boxer, look, I was in the MMA world, whatever, that's all fine. I guess I shouldn't have even called out the fact that I was a world champion. But anyways, I think that's what led me to get into this business, because I was a world champion and I was somewhat talented at the job that I did. They looked towards me and they said, we need someone with your skill to be able to double someone. And that's how I got into the business when I first got here. And so I was teaching people at this gym. And
this was still in Boston?
No. I came here. So my buddy opens a gym here and says, hey, listen. And I was in college at the time at Northeastern, and I was going to be a physical therapist. And he calls me up saying, look, I have nobody to help with the workload, and I need personal trainers as well as, people that can teach class, and you'd be great. And so I come flying out here and I sleep on his couch for like a year, making absolutely nothing, but I'm trying to help him, thinking I'll go back to college. And I never went because while I was doing it, I was training, producers and, I was, Shaquille O'Neal, Wayne Gretzky, things like that at the time. Right. And lo and behold, one producer says, look, you're really talented. We need a double on my TV series that's happening in Oahu right now in Hawaii. It was called The Raven, and it had Lee Majors on it, and it was cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a bad TV show, but it was awesome. It was about a white guy that was a real ninja.
But Lee Majors.
Yeah.
That's the $6 million man.
I'm in.
That's not screwing around.
No, and I was in.
Were you him? Were you doubling him?
No,
Okay.
I was doubling the lead of the TV show.
The redheaded guy.
Well, yeah, I wish you.
The guy with the
I wore a
flowing
wig.
red hair.
I wore a wig.
Okay.
But they pretty much taught me how to do stunts on the show because they liked my ability to do, to fight stuff.
Okay.
But therein lies the idea that back then they looked for the right person to do the right job. Nowadays, sometimes you can't hire. Okay, I'm just going to bring up one movie. There was one movie back in the day, a very big movie, probably years ago, right? Recently, where they were going to do a motorcycle stunt. It was a female driver, but they wanted the right, ethnicity instead of the right talent, and so they hired someone that I don't think was, and I think everyone said, not the smartest idea. This person came in and they whiskey throttled and they wound up.
What is a whiskey? I don't know.
Just, twisting the whiskey,
Okay.
Twisting the throttle so hard back, and it's just going wild and letting go of control
Okay.
of the bike, and drove into the wall and of course passed away, and so because nowadays, I remember there was one show where I had hired the right person, and I got a call from SAG saying I didn't hire the right, ethnicity. And I said, well, you guys can go ahead and just take my card for me because I hired the right person that wasn't going to get killed.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, this person dies on another movie, and it's not the fact that I think any stunt people are trying to, acquiesce to the hierarchy. I think that we are trying to juggle, the dynamic of what's going on. You've got a world that was changing and saying, look, there has to be equal opportunity. And everyone's saying, okay, this equates across the board. In the stunt world, it doesn't always. Sometimes having a man dress up as a woman to drive the car is necessary. Sometimes having a woman, to do whatever it is for the guy is a necessity.
Well, or how many times do smaller women
There you
double
go.
kids?
There you go. So for me, I think that the most important thing when it comes to the stunt world is hire the right person for the right job, no matter, and don't get me wrong, there is a certain part of the stunt world that does try to hire, their family members and so forth. And this was back in like the late 90s.
Nepotism is
Yes.
alive today as well.
So, I understand why people do have a claim and do have an issue. But when it comes to safety, you have to just, back up. You have to just let stunt people hire the right person for the right job.
Do you think the world has changed now, where you're saying that we're so much, we're looking into that on such a deeper level that as far as the ethnicity goes, would you be called on that today the same way you would have a couple years ago?
Actually, I don't think so now. I think we've kind of started to go backwards because of the repercussions of what have happened from it. I still feel that there is a certain level of Hollywood that is aware and wants to administer to, and I believe it's right, Look, if a woman should have a job, hire at least a woman, even though a guy is going to drive the car. At least let a woman get a job that day and be there and, do the rest of the driving that they can do without, someone getting hurt, fatally hurt. Just let the guy do whatever it is. Look, if you're in a motorcycle stunt and you can't because there's only a handful of women that can really drive a motorcycle well. There's like a Debbie Evans who is better than men on a motorcycle. And if you can get her, do that.
Is this because like motorcycle, like a lot of the stunt people I would imagine are coming from motorsport, and women's motorsport is still something that's developing? Or
I don't think so. I think that, I think that women, are smarter than men.
Agreed.
Because the stunt industry is not smart. Look, we are a bit ridiculous. We fall on our heads for a living.
Yeah.
I literally stand in the path of a car and let it hit me.
Well, you were the guys who said if someone told you to go up on a roof and jump off, would you?
We
and
do.
You said yes.
And the women are like, no. So I think that women are smarter than men. And I think that women love doing stunts, and I think they're fantastic. I mean, there are so many people that I can call on that, honestly, I think that women are probably tougher than men. They have to fall downstairs in a skirt.
Yeah,
God bless them. And I'm telling you right now, there are girls that do this that make men look, like weaklings, because they just go ass over tea kettle, fart knockers from God knows where. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, there's no way she can stand up from that. And they get up and they're like, I'm okay.
If somebody had to ask me who the most impressive stunt person that I have seen or worked with is today, I would probably say it's Alicia.
Yeah. I mean,
who's Alicia?
So Alicia Vela Bailey is the person I hired on Avatar. And I'm going to say right now, I value her more than a stunt person, but yes,
she's far beyond that.
Yeah,
and that's probably why I would throw her name forward. She is a chameleon in a way, and I know that outside of the world of Avatar, I think she's double Gal Gadot on Wonder Woman and
Charlize Theron.
She is the get, because not only can she do the stunt work, but from my perspective, she also can copy the motion. She's a student of how do they walk, how do they move, and then brings that into her work as a stunt woman.
100%. There's a Heidi Moneymaker. There's Alicia Availability. I think Alicia, because she is like family to me. I swear she's like my sister. She's always going to be a person that I say is the greatest stunt woman ever. But I mean, come on, Debbie Evans. If anybody knows who Debbie Evans is, she's royalty in the stunt world.
Is she?
Oh my gosh.
Well, because if you guys are doing your job right, you're invisible.
Yeah, I mean, there's Corey Eubanks who drives a car, that's on par. Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many people that are wheelmen, right? But those wheelmen, that special group is very small. Mm-hmm. And now the women have taken over a good section of it, but it's also still small. So I think that going back to what you said about maybe there's not so many women because, there's not so many men either.
Yeah.
I don't call on a lot of guys to drive cars. I call on special ones because these cars will kill people, and some of the times these cars are expensive, and if you dent them, we're all screwed.
It's a problem.
So I think that just being a wheel man is a very small group of people. And a lot of times to get those women to do the jobs that you need, they're not available. They're on other things.
Yeah.
So if you have a girl that's going to have to take this car and bring it in really close to someone and not kill them, and you don't have someone that you are 100%, sure that this person won't kill someone, then that's where I say it's okay to put a wig on a guy, make sure it's safe, have a guy just do this one stunt and then turn it back over to the woman for the rest of the day. And I don't think, guys, the industry is no longer, I think, policing that as bad as they were, when this whole world started changing dynamics. I think they've understood that there's a certain amount of leeway you have to give to safety. And I like that. And I think that it needs to stay that way. However, I do feel that there is a certain level of reality to what people are trying to get out of it, which is hire a woman for the job if a woman deserves to have the job.
It's also probably that, I would guess you're mentioning that sort of the pool to choose from is not as great as the male pool, but also like think about the movies that we were growing up with. Who was doing the stunts? What characters were doing the stunts? They were the guys. They were the men. And it was, that was an action movie. And when you mentioned Charlize Theron, she comes in and she can do amazing work, and she can carry as a lead in an action movie. We've both had the great pleasure of working with Sigourney Weaver, who in Alien comes on the scene as the lead in a space action movie where there's going to be tons of stunt work for them in it. But that's the exception, not the rule, coming through the 70s and 80s and 90s. So I imagine that the culture is just catching up as more roles are being written for women in action movies.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, look, something will happen. Everybody will knee jerk and go to the extreme, and then they'll realize, okay, we went too far and we need to go backwards.
And everything finds its center.
100%. So I think that we're on point to have a great dynamic that's going on. I think that we've done the right thing. I think that we are at the place we need to be. I do think that now the movie industry has changed on the whole, as far as not being able to shoot in LA as much as we used to, as far as, not being able to hire as many people as we used to because of, budgets and so forth. So I think now the industry has swung to a different dynamic in the sense that now people want to just get jobs.
Yeah.
Versus, want to police the jobs.
Yeah, it's a new era, especially for the Los Angeles film community, where the jobs that used to, when I started in this town, probably you too, you would go to India or you would go to Iceland or you would go to Louisiana because you wanted those environments. And now we're going to these places to shoot on stages, and it's a different world than it used to be, and hopefully we'll get some more coming back to Los Angeles. We still have, I think, the best infrastructure and
I agree,
and some of the best crew. Certainly the depth on the bench here, so to speak, for people doing great quality work is really strong.
Look, I can tell you in all honesty, I've worked all over this world, and nowhere compares to working in LA as far as I can throw a stick and hit 12 professionals who are at the top of their game here that I could call on within 5 minutes and have them come in. Whereas other places in this world, you can't.
That's always been my issue. I've done a lot of work out of town. And getting my core crew, I'm usually very successful at. But when I need to start expanding beyond that, I kind of run through the...
Yeah, there are a lot of towns that have
pool.
maybe 2-3 really strong crews worth of people, and then you're starting to get the
But I've done a
others.
lot of times where I'm bringing in day players who have never done it before.
Right. But at the same token, you get your core people, and then something happens. They get sick,
Right.
they get injured, and you've lost this integral part.
Yeah.
And then trying to get someone that night to fill in the next
No,
day
that
to do
doesn't exist.
Steadicam or something. Whoa!
But it's not just, and it's not just the crew. It's also the support services. If I'm in Albuquerque and they change the scene order, props that I need, I have to get them from LA. Hopefully I can get them shipped overnight. Because Albuquerque does not offer me the materials.
I have to admit, things are... Okay, if something happens to the camera and it breaks down, I can probably get 10 here. Whereas other places in the world, you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, shooting in London also is very good. The problem with London right now is that they are the ones that have all the jobs. And to get people that you need or to get the equipment that you need is sometimes very difficult in that world.
Because they're just so busy.
100%. So I don't think that... you're right. I think that the business will come back to LA. I think that it is starting to stabilize and will slowly start to come back, especially now that LA is starting to go backwards and allow people to shoot for less money with permits and so forth.
Yeah, that's
I think that's great.
I only worry about the stuff in town when I recently read that Quixote, right, which is another...
Oh, they backed out real quick and left everyone,
They're bailing on all their stages. They're still going to support with all the rentals that they do, but there is a real contraction here, and what I mostly worry about is for... I come from a prop world, right? So that the big prop houses and the big manufacturing facilities... That's the infrastructure that helps us stand out. And if those start to close down and go away, then that's going to be a real problem.
We just lost Ben Labs, product placement.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job. I like that. Look, I'll tell you something. I don't think that we'll ever have an issue when it comes to that. I think that we have so many. We have an abundance here.
Yeah.
Losing some is not going to be, and I hope we don't. God help us all, guys. I don't want anyone to lose their jobs here. However, I do feel that, still shooting in LA, even though we've lost stages or some of the infrastructure, we still have an abundance of it here.
We do. Sony just shut down their costume department.
Yep.
And I think it was Sony, right? And all those people done, out of work, and the costume inventory is probably going to get absorbed, but it can get absorbed by maybe Western.
We're lucky that we started with so much that we could weather having some cut back.
Yeah. At some point, we should probably talk about the integration between props and stunts. And I've had the pleasure of working with you a bunch. And
good.
Even on the last, we did this tiny little, it was, it's not out yet. It's Al Pacino's King Lear. And it was the first time that I'd ever heard anybody recommend that stunt swords could be made out of wood. And I'd never done that before. And I thought it was incredibly successful. So thank you for teaching me about that. What are some of your experiences with trying to get props made that you really need to stay safe? And is there any instance where you get a lot of pushback on it?
So, I mean, of course, budget is always going to be the big problem.
That's the trick everywhere, right?
I learned about stunts being made out of wood because, China and Japan, especially Japanese, they would do all of their samurai movies back in the day with those wooden swords just painted, silver. And the United States didn't know that. We were behind the times, if you ask me. And, when we started doing things over here, and the reason why I found out is I did this low-budget movie back in the 90s, and Sonny Chiba was on it. And Sonny Chiba is just this dope-ass, old-school, Japanese sword movie, hero legend. And, all his guys are there, and they have these swords, and they're flying around with them so fast. And I'm like, man, that's the greatest, aluminum I've ever seen, because aluminum swords are still kind of heavy. And I'm like, I grab it, and they're so light. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, no, it's just wood. It's just, pine. And you're like, I didn't know that. So that's where I learned it. And this was back in the early 90s that I had found out. But these guys had been doing it since Kurosawa days.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and they're so smart. But then, we brought it here and I started talking to people. And, I remember doing Elliott Battle Angel. And the prop master on that was genius. I mean, there's a man who didn't just do props. He checked in with stunts constantly. And he was like, what can we do to make this thing work? And how are we going to do things? And he'd come in and is going, hey, got an idea. And he also understood this. And everyone in the prop world understands this. Stunt people are going to fuck your shit up.
Oh yeah,
we
call you the stunt breakers.
We're going to destroy your props. Don't hand them to us. Don't give them to us. Why are you giving them to us? Don't give them to us. Are you kidding me?
What was the prop master's name on that? It was Steve, I think, something. I can't remember. We're looking it up right now.
Well, you guys are so fun.
No, we got a man in the chair.
And so, looking into what we did with, wooden swords, I think that's fantastic. I think that the ability for you guys to also, execute is amazing here in LA. Because as soon as I tell you, make something out of wood, for, the King Lear movie, which had no money, but you still were able to, we were getting things done. There's people were doing wooden swords on a couple of the, Peter Pan movies and stuff like that, that were recent as well. So it's an age-old practice now in the United States that has been happening since, the late 90s, I believe.
And just for the folks, Jason Hammond, thank you.
Yeah, Jason.
There you
love
go.
him.
Sorry, Jason. I'm sure you're listening.
We called him Steve.
Maybe it's his nickname. So one of the things, just for the folks that are listening, right? A steel sword looks great, is heavy, and can actually hold an edge. So in stunt work, that's not really the best. Aluminum looks about right when it's polished, but when you hit those together, they can gall. You basically, if you have a smooth, dull aluminum sword, pretty soon after a bunch of scene work, you're going to have a serrated edge, right? And that's dangerous again.
Depends on the aluminum.
Yeah.
Don't forget there's about 3 or 4 different grades of aluminum, this aircraft aluminum that people are using. And you're right. If you use a very soft one, it will ding and it will become a serrated edge, which is completely dangerous.
Yeah.
But there are some that are made that don't ding as bad. And when they ding, they'll only dent. They don't turn into, so it's better. However, one of the most important things about those aluminum swords was it wasn't heavy and you didn't carry momentum with it. So if you had to stop the sword because someone stepped into it, you could. If you're using, sometimes rubber swords, stopping the sword would not stop it. The sword would flex and hit a person in the face.
It's a rubber sword. You need to put an armature in there as well. And the armature can work its way through the sword because it's a very thin... It's a very thin rubber because we're trying to keep this looking like an actual sword.
That's right.
And so that's not always a good solution. But wood was really good because
wood's amazing.
It's lightweight. And like you're saying, when you have speed and mass, then you have something that can hurt. Like you can throw a feather at me as hard as you want, and it's never going to hurt because there's just no mass. So if we can take the mass out, if there's a near miss, it makes it a lot safer. And we were building those swords out of oak, actually.
That's right.
And they held up way better than I thought they would.
They're great.
And if you need to refurbish it, you can sand it down and give it a new paint job, and you're there.
100%. And if you get hit with a sword, it at least has some give versus an aluminum sword.
Yeah.
So look, there is you have to make sure that you buy the right thing, the right tool for the right job. Sometimes just a handle is important, and you put tracking markers on, and you're all set. Sometimes a foam sword is great because it's stiff, but it's foam. Sometimes a rubber sword is great. Because if it's going to hit someone in your planning on hitting someone, you use this rubber sword because it's going to slap the shit out of them, but it's still going to be soft.
The one thing, I've worked with Tim Connolly.
Yeah, Tim's great. Love Tim.
Tim was fantastic. And Tim and I worked quite a bit together with a lot of weapons. And for things like knives, Tim and I would work out a whole selection of knives.
Yeah.
We would have various great, from real practical knives to knives with no edge to various densities of rubber, and we would have multiples of every single one. So for any one knife scene, we could have a dozen knives that we would be bringing in and out of the scene.
100%. And let me also say, prop masters out there and stunt people, if you're listening, or directors, if you're listening, it doesn't hurt to just take a piece of cardboard, roll it up and put a piece of tape around it, and then marker the end, and let this person wheel it around with all of their might as fast as they humanly want, because A, the blade won't hit someone. B, if you do hit someone with this piece of cardboard, it will flex. Yeah. Because I have had handles that were very, strong, hit people and still hurt them when someone
Tim
stabs.
did that a lot.
You know what I mean? A piece of cardboard is great, right?
He had, whenever, especially in his rehearsals, all of his knives, he would cut them out of cardboard.
And I'm telling you guys, even on set, you move your hands so fast that for the most part, I'm trying to also paint in a knife blade anyways. I just did a knife fight in my movie, Painter, go see it. And, I did a fight scene where, we had, of course, all the various knives, but you couldn't see them.
Yeah.
Couldn't even see the handle on her hand because it was just,
fast.
She's just whipping her hand as fast as she can because you want it to look like she's not holding back. And now in post, I'm painting in the blade.
Yeah.
Even if there was a blade there, a rubber blade there, I'm still not seeing it. So in order for me to be able to see this, because it's not catching it doesn't matter. Even if it's a silver rubber blade, it might not catch the light very well.
And you may still have to put it in.
100%. I'm still painting it in, guys.
And for stabbings, we never use. I don't remember the last time I've used a retractable knife.
Well, I was about to bring up retractables. I don't use them. I don't think that they're safe because they can jam.
They could jam.
Okay. Yes and no. I support them and I love them dearly. I did Lincoln with Spielberg, and we had bayonets. And those bayonets will kill you, even if they are retractable. Trust me. And some of them didn't retract. But when you put a stunt pad on someone, that armadillo back, it's completely protective. You can't get through it. You're fine.
Gotcha.
So just make sure you put that hard, shell on the person wherever you're stabbing. You're fine. However, I do have to admit, we also did another prop on there, and you guys are going to love this. We baked with clay axes.
Okay.
And inside,
like Sculpey or something like
we made an axe head, and inside of it was blood.
Okay.
And Steven was all about this. And I would take those and I would bury it into your collarbone, or I would hit you in like the back of your spine or whatever and put an armadillo on you. And when it hit you, the head would break and disintegrate, and it looked like pieces of bone that were coming out of like the corner of your. It was
I love that.
Gorgeous. Now they were so good that they had to cut it out of the movie. Steven came to me at the end of the movie after Lincoln and said, "I'm so sorry, we had to cut that piece out because it was fantastic." I still have the footage of it too, and it's beautiful, but it was over the PG-13 rating. That's how good it was.
Blood is always dangerous. That can be the decider right now.
To this day, I'm telling you guys, one of the greatest things that I'd ever learned in my history was that from Steven on that set. And those props, some were just like little tiny handheld hatchets. Some were big axes, like people were just fighting in that battle. If you remember at the beginning, that was like the Gettysburg battle or so forth. And you saw, Now, the bayonets, of course you could use rubber ones, but dude, you can't. You cannot use a rubber bayonet in any way, shape, or form.
Too floppy.
Oh my gosh! And they were so long, and so so the retractables were great when we were sticking it into people because you still had the bayonet. You were still able to do it. When you use tracking marks with bayonets are so long that you can't always, as a stunt performer, know where the end is.
No, exactly.
And I might be passing it through your head, and now it's like, dude, you had a bayonet, you just crossed over someone. And Jim Cameron's famous for this. He's like, look. If I have an arrow inside of me and I turn, I'm going to hit someone. I want to know I'm hitting someone.
Yeah.
You should bounce off someone. So we would put pieces of steel in front of people and just attach it to them so they knew how to fall on the ground so that they knew that, if they had an arrow, they couldn't just fall back onto their back. I think that using a retractable is valid. I think that, people like Quentin Tarantino have made a career, even like a Nolan, have made a career out of trying to do practical things on camera. And when you can do something practical on camera, don't discount it. try to adopt to it and say yes to it whenever you can, especially if you're going to do that like magic trick and make people really believe this is happening.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not sure how they did, and I think that personally what they did for Saving Private Ryan when they put that I think it was the knife into that guy's chest.
Yeah.
I think that they had a fake body. And they used a real knife and put it into and they just had his head here, so the fake body was in somewhere, and they just slipped it in. So that was one of the most graphic moments I've seen in history.
And it's so emotional too.
You were talking about Christopher Nolan and magic. I did The Prestige.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And all of the magic tricks were all done practically. Every one of the actors were taking classes. What they did do is they would clean things up, because doing sleight of hand it's like playing a musical instrument. So when Christian Bale was constantly walking around doing card tricks and making a ball disappear, he was doing it. And then in post-production, if a little piece was sticking out, they would clean that up.
I love that.
Otherwise, all of the magic in that was real. And I remember at the time there was that other movie, The Illusionist, that came out, and that was the bragging rights of The Prestige, that all of our actors were doing. Were really doing the magic.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to just say that, don't discount certain things, and I think that we live in a day and age where a lot of times people are like, do it in post. I think that, when you can do something that is real and in camera, and you can absolutely, try to like put it right in front of the audience, it holds a lot of weight.
Sometimes we can't. Like I was doing Kenobi, right? And we had a scene where somebody's going to get run through with a lightsaber. And in rehearsal, I made sure that they had the full length blade to rehearse with. And when we got to that moment, because it lights up, it's an interactive light source. You cannot make, as far as our technology was, we couldn't figure out how to do a retractable, interactive lit lightsaber. So we had shorties that came up, but we were constantly having to remind the actors, to your point, about how you have to remember that this thing has another 2 feet of length on it, and you have to respect that, because the way you're walking right now, you're dragging this through the ground.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if that's the choice, that's fine. But there's a lot of VFX that have to come together to get that to work, and we're going to have to dig a little trench in the ground with this lightsaber.
100%. So I agree 100% with what you're saying. When you can't do it, don't. Look, I've taken guns and put them straight to someone's forehead to shoot them, right? I'm not using blanks. I'm going to use airsoft. And if the airsoft cycles and hits someone in the forehead, I'm using a rubber gun. You know?
Weapons to me have been my big campaign, because we can do things in post-production. You can use blowback.
Yeah.
However, one thing that the gun does provide is something for the actor to work with.
Yeah.
When you're firing a weapon and you pull the trigger and there's a blank in it, you're smelling it, you're feeling it, you're hearing it. It's allowing the actor to get into their character. Where doing it all in post-production does not allow the actor to do that.
100%. And I'm just going to say that, even if you do have an airsoft gun, you still don't mind the weapon the same way you do if you have blanks.
The training's the same. But the reason that, we used blanks for so much of Avatar 2 and 3 was for that sort of very, very visceral, real experience with the weapons.
Exactly.
And it kept us honest on mag changes, and it kept us honest on maybe there's going to be a jam and an actor's going to have to clear it. And that's a moment that's unexpected and unscripted, but it comes from a very real weapon. And I don't know, moving forward, if that's going to be the thing, because gas blowback airsoft guns are very effective at giving the inertial displacement and the informing the actor's arm, but it's also not quite as visceral as a machine gun.
And that's exactly how I'll sell it. When I sit down on a weapons film and I'll be talking to the producers at the beginning, I'll always tell them, I'm not trying to sell you weapons for any kind of political agenda. It's strictly for the cinema of it, that I want what a blank firing weapon is going to bring to the show, which anything else is always going to be a second choice.
Let me just say that, my movie had a lot of gun work in it, and, when I first got on it, Disney's stance is no real guns, no blanks either. And I don't believe, I think that personally, guys, this is the curtain people will put up to try to make sure that things are safe nowadays, which I think is fantastic. But if you take the time to explain to everyone that, okay, this is a shot-by-shot basis, Disney was okay with it. And once you do take the time and show them, okay, this scene, we've got a big, huge open space. Nobody will be in front of them, but I want to see the actors firing weapons side by side because, they're going to be able to hear each other's, guns cycling and see the shells ejecting and mind them. And Disney was like, okay, that's completely fine. They just don't want you to say, okay, you have carte blanche, just run wild.
They want to do their due diligence.
So I think that guns now are completely safe and valid, and I think that studios will let you. But they're going to, of course, first put up the safety protocol and say, no, you can't.
Right after Rust happened, we were in the volume and we were working.
I remember that.
And the Disney gun protocols came down, and as I was reading them, I was at a point where I'm like, this is just not going to work, because by the definition that they are providing me for firearms, the wood, remember the wood guns that we had to be our bullpup?
Yep.
We had a design that we just couldn't really conveniently house or clad in another gun, and Jim had made the determination very late in the process that he wanted to use blanks in the volume. This is when we were in Hawaii, actually, so it was pretty close to shooting, and it was a real push for us, because normally if you're going to make a space gun and you're going to use it as a blank firing gun, you pick a gun first and then you design on top of that platform. And I would probably pick, an AK or an M1, or there's a number of guns that would work, and you adjust the design to fit that particular weapon. In our case, we had to back into a design because I wasn't going backwards on the design of the Recom rifle, and it turned out that the only thing we could kind of use for it, and it matched pretty well, was the Magpul ACR, which, if anybody's ever had to work with, is a very difficult gun. Some of the other ones we'd already built literally out of plywood. They had triggers that worked. They had charging handles where they were supposed to be. You could drop a mag and put it back in, and it's all wood and just brilliant construction from our team in the shop. But by Disney's definition, that was a firearm and would have required the protocols to clear the barrel, and it didn't have a barrel. Even the Nerf guns, and for anybody that's interested in this, I had a lot of fun with those. When we had our performers in the volume and they were getting shot at, we would shoot Nerf darts at them, sometimes, not always, so that they actually had to duck and to dodge something that was real and coming at their faces. Smart. And it was a lot of fun for us in the prop team shooting all these Nerf guns at our actors. But by their definitions in these early days, those Nerf guns were also needing to be treated as firearms.
Yeah.
Now,
we pushed back. I had a representative come out. I explained all of these things, and they actually went back and tweaked these rules a little bit to tighten them up and accommodate the types of things that we were using.
So, long story short, too late. Just know this much to all of you guys out there that are watching this. It's not the end all when someone says, no, you can't use guns. That's not true. That's their speed bump. And it's up to you to show them that A, it's going to be safe. B, you are safe. And C, there is a need, not a desire, a need on a shot-by-shot basis.
Sure.
And if you go through that, you'll be fine. But for you guys, I think the idea is this. It's simple. Here's for the stunt world. When we changed from Fox to Disney, because Disney had bought over Fox.
This is with Avatar, right?
That's right, with Avatar. There was a change of guard when it came to the safety protocol. So when we first did the Avatar, the first one, we were Fox, and they came out with their safety supervisors, and they did their diligence until they realized that Jim Cameron is probably one of the most safe directors in the world. I have to admit that. He 100%. Will stop the whole day and waste the money of the whole day to make sure you're safe. So once Fox realized that, and once they also realized that we put pads everywhere and nobody really has to do a bad stunt on Avatar, they were completely fine turning over the reins to myself and Jim, and never would step in our way. And we were able to shoot with speed and ease, but no one would get hurt. When we made the move to Disney, it was a whole new boat again. Their safety team came in and did the exact same thing and said, no, there's a protocol. You have to do a Bible, and you can't just have someone fall off a ledge. You have to tell us it's going to happen right now, and then we have to have something written. And so then I go, ooh, that's going to be difficult. But, they're like, this is the way it is. And the very first day I did that, and Jim was like, you know what? This isn't working. I need someone to go up on that platform there and, run down a branch. So let's go ahead and build that. And I go, oh, Jim, I need to submit this right now.
The
to
paperwork
the
involved
people,
is
right?
ridiculous.
And
it was
I go,
the same with the guns.
Right. And I said, so give me like 2 or 3 hours. And he goes, no, I won't give you 2 or 3 hours. How many years have I been doing this? And nobody did this to me. Why are we doing this right now? And I go, because this is the way it is right now. And he goes, I'll talk to someone about it. And you got John Landau. And then safety came in and said, listen, we've had a discussion. Go ahead and do what you're going to do right now. We're going to understand what goes on because you guys are already, in the midst of things. And there's sometimes a shot-by-shot basis. However, if you don't mind, can you try to submit to this protocol whenever you can?
Yeah.
So I think that for all
or
of
do
you
an
out
after action report.
100%. So one of the things I want you guys to know out there is that when you hear someone saying, do all of this work, and you're like, this isn't going to work, it won't work. And you're right about that. However, by someone telling you to do this, it doesn't mean that you can't debate with them in a nice way and a logical way and a safe way and prove your case. And once you prove your case, you will be able to do what is necessary. But you can't come in with a hot head and go, screw you, I'm doing what I want to do, and screw everyone that had this idea.
The policies come from a good place,
right?
But they're also written by people who don't do that work,
right?
And so when you have lawyers and people who are
insurance companies,
companies, and all the folks who are, and I'm not trying to invalidate these positions, but these, the safety folks maybe aren't actually coming from the world and understanding how, like you're saying, case by case basis. There's no one size fits all.
That's right.
You just need the right people in the right position, making good choices and making the best available choices to keep things safe.
I also find that after I've kind of gone to court and proven my case, I come out in a much stronger position. Right. They respect me on a level that I did not have prior.
100%.
How many times have you been dragged into court?
Well, he's saying
the court of public opinion.
Yeah,
the metaphorical court.
Yes.
I just was like, oh man.
No. I mean, going to court with producers where I'm sitting down with producers saying why I want to use real weapons.
Yeah, the law states this, and he says, well, there has to be, a supplement to the law. Yeah. And people say, no, it cannot happen. And you say, you plead your case.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about. Yeah. And so I hope that everyone that do watch this, get out of this, that when it comes to the stunt world, working in conjunction with props, we are the ones that have to inform where this has to be tweaked and adopted. And on both sides, we have to try to teach and educate whoever it is that's saying no, that we have an ulterior to that no.
Yeah.
And it's only on a shot-by-shot basis. And please understand that we are going to do things properly and make sure that we do inform you, because they want just to be told. They don't just want you to go out there and do everything and then, pick up the pieces afterwards when there's a lawsuit. They want you to just make sure that you have a line of communication. And in the past, and from some of the old school people, they prefer not to because they feel that they are being slighted in that case.
Yeah.
However, my job nowadays is to have some understanding, some patience, and realize that I have to still educate.
It's the world that we live in.
That's
now.
it. So be okay with it, guys, and just realize that, look, I'm a guy with an eye patch, and I do it.
Yeah.
So I certainly think that you guys can too. And honestly, at the end of the day, you will be rewarded for it.
And it takes, again, getting back to the collaboration, I think that obviously prop teams have to collaborate with everybody, but our friends in the stunt world, it's even more important to collaborate.
Yeah, and I have to
and get things right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I loved about you on this film. Even like I said, working on Elliott Battle Angel, there's certain prop masters. Don't get me wrong, all the prop people I've worked with, I think are fantastic. I love them with my heart. I think they're fantastic. But some shows, they don't have the time or the money to be able to be as ingrained into the stunt world, to be able to have their finger on the pulse of what needs to be all the time. And the stunt people don't always have the best communication, because we're so busy trying to get previs done. We're so busy trying to do all these other things that sometimes we let slip through our, crystal ball, a weapon that we should have had, but we didn't have. You know, and
Yeah,
then we're
and
all trying to make
to
it.
that point too, it's very important for the prop teams to be able to give you rehearsal versions of the props for the previs that are relatively true to the form factor, weight, and maybe even if it's a rubber, the density of what you'll be working with on the day. And as much as we can do that, we do. Sometimes you're asking for stuff because you need to get into your work before we even have designs finalized, and that's where we're just like, okay, this isn't quite done. We're done. Like Jim hasn't okayed this yet, but it's probably going to be about like this, and we get you what we can.
Right, and just know there's two prop people out there that are dealing with stunt people, and they're like, we're waiting for the props. Please tell them sometimes it's okay to take initiative. You can go and take a puzzle mat, and you can take a knife to it and cut a sword out with it.
Yeah.
That works just as well. And then you can educate the prop people as far as, do you need a really soft one or do you need like a stiffer? Because trust me, guys, there's at least 3 different grades of rubber weapons.
Yeah.
There's one that will fuck you up.
Well, we
slap the shit out of you.
And that's
ring your
we'll
bell.
Call that the hard rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's
and hard rubbers are very valuable for us because they don't break, but they can
That's right.
still survive a trip to the floor.
That's right. And they won't flex so much.
And they don't flex so much.
Then you've got the medium rubbers that do have still the armature in them, and they can be good or not good. Because then when you hit, they bend and they stick, and it's like, damn, that shot looks like shit now.
Yeah.
But listen, guys.
And then the super soft.
And then the super soft, which will be fine, but it looks like you're slapping someone with a fish. And so, and you'll see
which
a
is
lot
good when the rubber needs to be a fish.
Yeah, but then you'll look, if you ever watch some old Scorsese movies, you'll see some rubber bats.
Yeah.
And they're all like this in the background as they're being Joe Pesci. And you're like, so just know that, you have to forgive the rubbers when the rubber needs to be forgiven. And you have to just sometimes realize that it's magic. And if they don't see this, it's okay.
In a world where CG cleanup is not as expensive as it used to be.
Yeah.
We were doing Kenobi, and Ewan McGregor has a very particular twirling style with his lightsaber, and there's a lot of hand movement with it, and it informs the character, and it's great stuff. The lightsaber that we were giving him is sort of a hybrid between episode 3 and episode 4, and this thing was made basically on a fragmentation grenade, among other things, and it's got this box, which is the switch. And if we were to give him something that was that accurate, it would tear his hands up doing this work. With Vader, it's not such a big deal because he's wearing gloves. We ended up in these combat sequences with a lightsaber that was basically a perfectly smooth tube with paint that was representing the textures and the things that he had to use, because that worked for those stunt sequences.
Yep.
And because they're moving so fast, and because with a lightsaber you also have the advantage of this big glowing blade, nobody's looking at the hilt in the hand. They're looking at the blade. And the digital cleanup on that, which we had prepped visual effects for, actually ended up not being necessary because it was either moving too fast or we'd done a decent of enough job with the paint work that we could literally give him a perfectly smooth tube for his hand, and we didn't need to mess with it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm a really maybe I'm one of the better people to be on this show, because I've been fortunate enough to be a stunt coordinator, a stunt man, a second unit director, and now director. So that I've learned what it's like to be on a director's side and have people work with me on the director's side. And, you guys come to me with like this one day where I have to look at all the props. And I've seen Jim do it and all that stuff. And it's like, one of the things that I learned on my last movie is that my prop master would sometimes just go back and do his own work. And then he'd have this one day to show me everything. I wish that he had checked in with me more.
Yeah, I'm
because
much more of an incremental person.
I always use my show and tell as just the final of everything we had been talking about up to that point.
Yeah, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. The show and tell was good, but it in no way was great because, he was doing his own work. He was doing his own, and he would ask me some questions, but he didn't want to disturb me sometimes. He was always like, oh, you're so busy. I really wish you would have.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things in there that needed to be done that weren't done.
The art of interruption is key to being a prop master.
Yeah, and let me tell you something, guys.
It's a great phrase.
It's so true because, and you'll be able to attest to this. I was famous for being able to spin Jim. you know, and I could walk in and go, Jim, I need to talk to you. Are you kidding me? Do you not see that I'm busy? Obviously, I can't. I've got an eye patch, Jim. And he's like, would you just shut? So I was always able to like defuse a situation, whether it be a director or, you know, whatever. And you guys don't have to have an eye patch on, but, you know, there's another one too, where, you know, did you not see I was busy? I'm like, my medication hasn't kicked in yet. It's going to soon. You know, and I would always give him something that would, you know, look,
you would throw it back at him.
Yeah. And well, it wouldn't throw back. It's like, I would never ever debate and go, you know, don't be an asshole to me. I would never do that. I would never meet someone head on and just clash like a ram. I would always go, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll go outside and have someone flog me later. I just have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to die, and you're going to yell at me when the time comes.
Well, and it's, you know, especially with Jim, he is the busiest man in the world. And you probably remember when I would set up those tables, because there was a pathway from his office to the table that he would sit with in the volume. And I would set up what I called director bait, where I would put a bunch of stuff in that path. And sometimes he would look at it, and sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes I would sit down there with that table for a long time, just quietly. I know he knew I was there, and I know he knew why I was there. And he would always make the time eventually to come and do it. But occasionally, you've got to get up in his face and say, I'm sorry, but we have to make this decision this week.
Here's another thing that you all need to learn, okay? There's a time and place. When you see him laugh and he's happy, first of all, don't jump into the conversation. Let him have the conversation. But when he's done and he's happy, go, hey, Jim, do you mind?
Yeah.
You know, catch him when he's happy. When he's pissed off and he's writing, don't go over there and walk over to him when he's on the table going like this and he's trying to write something down. And you go, hey, Jim, can I talk to you? Can you see that I'm not busy right now? You pick the right time.
Yeah.
Okay. Just know that you have to be an artist, like you just said. You know what I mean? There's an art.
Well, I find having a lot of little show and tells over the course of prep is so much more successful. Also, because if I have a particular sword I need to show you, if all I'm doing is bringing you the one sword, I'm getting a lot more time on that one prop.
Yeah, and also, guys, don't hover. First of all, you know, I would hover, and Jim would go like this. Garrett, I feel you hovering back there. Would you stop it?
I fell into the same trap. I would hover, and he'd be just like, "You're just back there, aren't you?"
And then he's like, you know, just don't hover. If you're gonna come in. You know, and you're like,
see, from our end, what I find is I hate hovering, and I find that I'll come up to the director, and then I'm waiting for the director, and to myself, I'm going, all right, I'm starting to fall into the hover zone.
Right.
So do I walk away?
Walk away.
Or
walk
do
away.
I stay there thinking, all right, if I wait just another minute,
walk away.
I'll get that time.
Walk away, people. But here's my solution to all of that. And this is the thing that most people don't know. You know, you have to be on your game 24/7. So a lot of people would say, okay, I've got the stuff, I want to get an answer, and you'd be over there with your stuff waiting for the answer. Don't do that. Have your stuff waiting. You know, and go over and check in to see when's the right time. Is he happy? Okay, but I don't have my stuff. And, you know, if you have your stuff standing by and you're ready to draw from it any time you can, and you go over and just check in and go, no, he's not ready, and get the fuck out, you know, you'll do better. Mm-hmm. But if you grab all your stuff going, I need to get an answer right now, and you hover, you're going to get chopped. You're going to get your head chopped off. And it's not the fact that they're jerks or dicks. It's the fact that they are so consumed.
They're in the zone.
And they're emphatic, and they're passionate about what they're doing. And they're like, they were just told that they don't have the budget to be able to get the art they need. And then you come over going, hey, can you look at this lighter? And he's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know, so just know, guys, it's like when you're married. There's certain times when you can tell your wife, you know, hey, let's do this. You know, and there's certain times when you have to just, you know, be okay with her spouting off at you because, you know, it's that day.
Yeah, I haven't learned that part yet.
You got to learn, you know, because there's times, and I told my buddy this, I go, look, his wife is pregnant now. And I can't talk about it now but it's someone you know. Anyways, because I'm sure that he's like, you can't broadcast the world. Anyways, it's someone. So his wife is pregnant.
This is a podcast, so you don't want to say that because this literally is broadcasting to the world.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't say a name.
Okay, good.
So I'm good.
What does it rhyme with?
But now I'm curious.
I love you for doing that.
I really, yeah. Can you draw a quick picture?
No. Anyways, what I can tell you is this. Basically, the idea is that when you are this person that's in the middle, that sits in our gray area that we do, you have to treat it like a pregnancy, you know, because your wife won't always speak out of a proper mind. Her hormones are going nuts. Directors, honestly, as much as they want to try to think with a proper mind, they were just told something, and you have no privy to it, but they were just told something that is going to all of a sudden snap them. right?
Right.
And then for you to go back and go, man, he was just a dick. He yelled at me. Guys, it's not that. It's the fact that sometimes they don't know what they're saying because they are already in a bad place, or they're already consumed with something else, or they were trying to think of this one thing and they just need to write it down. And you stepped in and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot when I was. So we have to, when it comes to being filmmakers, we have to have patience and understanding.
You need to know how to read the room.
Yeah, and you can't just hold the director to being a dick sometimes. You have to understand that we all are, me included.
Yeah, well, and directors, they have to, and you're a director, you have to make hundreds and hundreds of decisions every day as a director.
Yeah.
And everybody's coming to you with that question, and it's just about navigating that, sort of to your point, Scott, navigating the perfect time to do that. Have you found now that directing is sort of your main gig, that you have different interactions with the prop department that may even still relate to your stunt work, and like how has that changed for you?
Or have you added another layer? When you talk to someone as a director, are you still a stunt coordinator as well?
When I talk to someone about props, I'm still a stunt coordinator. I still know what's going to go in the future. Most directors don't. However, as a director, the difference now is, as a stunt coordinator, I was always thinking, okay, what's the right tool for the right job? As a director, you're thinking, okay, I want aesthetics.
Yeah, you're more down pipeline.
Yeah, you're looking at this as, what's the coolest, what is the story, you know what I mean? And so it's different.
That's really interesting that you just said that, because going back when Tim and I were working together, what I really liked about Tim was he would come to me with what he needed for the practical effect of the prop. And then I would address to him that sometimes what he was asking for would not match what I know the director would want aesthetically.
There you go.
And what was great with Tim, why the two of us got along so well, is that we did find the prop that satisfied both the aesthetic and the practical. And that is very important in the relationship, that you can't come by with your ego and go, it has to be this way.
But that's a testament to you. It really is. And that's where a really good prop master lies, because you're the one that facilitated that, communication. As a stunt person, we're just, we're dug in. We've got blinders on and it's safety, and it's like, do these moves, fantastic. And when you come in and you know how to say to someone in a proper way, and you can break through that, those blinders that the person has, you are the most valuable prop master. And he does it to me all the time when we're on Avatar. He's like, check this out. And I go ahead and I use it. I'm like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. He goes, great. And he takes it and walks away. There's a lot of people that are in the prop world.
I've never gotten 3 things wrong on the same prop,
whatever.
For the record.
Anyways, guys, the good news about him is that he came in to test the waters on a constant basis. And he was also there when we were doing things, to look at things and how they were working and reacting. And he was the conduit between the director and the stunt world. So he knew what the director wanted, just like you did. Mm-hmm. And so you're the one going, okay, I hear you. However, this is going to be something. So what can we do? We need to have a backup. So one of my superpowers was always having 3 or 4 different versions just in case this didn't work.
Yeah, right.
Jim always said, I wanted this. Done. I gave it to him. But just in case that didn't work, I had 3 or 4 in the back burners. Something I found is that, I have a prop master on my last movie who was great, loved him to death. But, we didn't have the money for it. However, he should have always had some way to, by hook or crook, have 2 or 3 out of his hip pocket that he could pull.
Well, I would never approach you with, this is the only way I can do it. I always, at least for my own self-protection, I want to go into it.
Hold on now. What I'm saying is, I'd get there and the prop would be there and he's like, but you wanted this. And I'm like, you're right, I did. However, now I'm in this situation and I need something else.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm sorry, but this is what you wanted, so this is what you got. And you're like,
yeah, you're not going to get that.
You can't sell it that way.
What was going on?
I was in Belgrade, Serbia, first of all, and Belgrade, Serbia, though it gives you a great tax incentive, does not allow you to have the tax incentive for anyone that is not from Belgrade, Serbia. So even if you hire someone from London or someone from Russia who's in the area, you still don't get your tax back. And for a person that was given $18 million on a movie that should have been probably 35 or 40, I was counting pennies, man. And I had 45 days and so many locations and so much to shoot.
That's tough.
Dude, I was pounding my face with my fist. However, you're right. I would always have said, look, these are the people that I love that are my department heads, and this is the people I need in those spots because I know them. However, sometimes you don't have that luxury.
Well, next time it would be my absolute pleasure to work with you as a director.
I appreciate it.
That would be a lot of fun.
You got it.
Here, what you're talking about, the relationship between a prop master and the stunt coordinator, matching the aesthetics. Have you ever had this one where you've had a sound mixer come by and say they want you to carry the groceries just loose because the bag is making too much noise?
Yep.
Where you have to find that way to go, this is more than just about it making a noise, that it doesn't look right for the person to be carrying the groceries loose, or they would try to convince us that the groceries, we should see the groceries in the car, and then let's do a shot where the groceries are on the table because we don't want to see you carrying the bag.
That's where I look them in the eye every time and I say, they're going to loop this anyway. Don't worry about it.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
Well,
but work with everybody. Everybody has those demands.
No, but I listen. This is a great point because I'm also told by these sound people, can you have them not, wear these boots when they're fighting because they're making all this noise and I can't hear the dialogue? Can you tell them to fight quieter in the background and not make noise? And all of a sudden your stunt guys going, and you're like, guys, just be quiet. Sometimes we really do try to. And listen, everyone. I value myself as being someone who listens. And even if it is the sound person saying, can you have them fight quieter? Don't go and go, no, I can't. Go duly noted.
Right, there's a way to...
We'll do what we can.
It's the same thing with the studio. You just have to make an effort.
Yeah.
If you make an effort and you show them that you did try to do what they're asking, then you win. If it doesn't work, then at least you show them it doesn't work and that this is the backup. We're going to make noise.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to just loop this in the end. But I did try. So make the effort first, guys, and don't just go, listen, I've got experience here. You're just going to waste your time and your money. You can't do that. You have to show the people. Here's a true story. This is what I learned, and this is what I learned on the very first Avatar. Very first day of the very first Avatar, I have Jake being grabbed by the backpack, by the Thanator, and being shook in the air. And he goes flying, because he releases the straps and falls down. So Jim tells me, I want one wire to the top of this guy's pick point, and I want 2 taglines on him. I go, okay, great. He walks away. I put 2 wires on him and 2 taglines because I'm going to capture him into a space and be able to shake him a little bit more violently. Mm-hmm. He comes out and he goes, what are you doing? And I go, I'm giving you what you wanted. He goes, no, you didn't. He gave me 2 wires and 2 wires. I asked for 1 wire and 2 wires. And I go, oh, well, that's because I think that you can capture someone. In my experience, you'll be able to do this. And he goes, listen, Garrett, when you direct your movie, I'll be your stunt coordinator. And I'll do exactly what you said. But until then, since I'm the director, will you do me a favor and do what I say? Because you might be right, but I won't know if I'm wrong until I see that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So please let me first see that I'm wrong before I go ahead and have yours ready in the background. But let me at least go down my avenue first.
And there are some directors who would be just the opposite. If you did it their way and it was wrong, they would go, I look to you to be the professional. Why did you let me make the mistake?
Well, listen, in those cases, you can't win for trying.
Exactly.
Those people, you have to just go ahead and go, I just got tagged. But at the end of the day, there's not many of them.
Yeah.
They're fewer than the directors that actually go, you're right, you gave me what I wanted. There's more directors nowadays that have a little bit more professionalism than the ones that just go, you should have told me. I think that comes from insecurity. When someone says that to you and snaps at you like that, you have to just automatically say to yourself, here's a director that's insecure, that probably has a studio breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to treat this like he's pregnant.
There's a lot of context.
And he's not pissed off at you. He just hates the fact that he has a baby inside of him and this baby is kicking and he's in pain. And once again, I go back to that analogy, it's like when you're with a director, sometimes it's like being with a pregnant wife. You have to understand where the argument is coming from and where the pissed offness is coming from.
Filmmaking is always a collaboration. It's a bunch of people coming together, and you're trying to find the perfect blend. Which actually brings me to I want to thank the sponsor of this episode of Prop Talk.
They would be.
They are Mayo Stirred brand Mustardays. It's the perfect blend of mayonnaise and mustard, now with a new swirl tip nozzle. Scott, we live in a busy world, and when I need a sandwich, time is of the essence. And with Mayo Stirred brand Mustardays with the new swirl top nozzle, my condiment application is a breeze. It saves me time and gives me the perfect blend of mayo and mustard every time. So please, folks, try Mayo Stirred brand Mustardays with the new swirl tip nozzle. You won't regret it. And also, if you'd like to become a sponsor of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, please reach out to info@propertymastersguild.org. That's info, at propertymastersplural.guild.org.
Hold on. No. There is a thing called Mustard Days. Where has this been all my life? Because, dude, can we have also mustard ketchup? Because, dude, I do this all the time. I will. And also, like, you know, what is the sriracha? Mustard racha?
Remember Goobers?
Dude, no.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Guys at Mustard Days. You guys that made Mustard Days. What the fudge?
Yeah.
Thank you. I want Mustard Days.
You know, there's so many combos this is bringing to mind. Like, we could do, like you just said, fudge. What about an ice cream topping that is in the same mayo stirred brand Mustard Days jar, but is actually combining a fudge and caramel topping with the perfect.
Or Michael Keaton's idea of feeding the mayonnaise directly to the tuna fish.
Well, I think there's a lot to think about there.
Y'all went off of that comedy tangent, but I was dead fucking serious.
I'm down.
Mustard Days sounds amazing.
Right? Listen, I didn't write a fake ad just to write a fake ad.
And I've been
This is
shot.
an idea.
You know, and I'm telling you right now, this is a guy that's telling you the truth from a guy who's been shot. I want Mustard Days in my life.
I'm going to bring us back around to you for a minute, and I want to support you in your quest for Mustard Days.
Wait, let me call my girl then, okay? Baby, would you please get Mustard Days? I want Mustard Days. Okay.
So, there's just a few canned questions that I like to ask people, and I'm going to give you one of these. And it is, if you could have worked on any project, past, present, or maybe something that you'd like in the future, maybe this is, you've already done this, maybe you've already achieved this, but what would that be? The aspirational, wouldn't it have been amazing if I hope to someday. What is the answer to that question for you?
Collateral.
Or
Heat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Either one. Pick one. You know, both of those are fantastic. But I mean, honestly, at the height of your game, look, you could have said worked on the first Star Wars, whatever it is. You know, it just depends on what your taste is. I think Michael Mann made possibly one of the greatest films of all time. And don't get me wrong, I love Tony Scott and Man on Fire. Mm-hmm. I love Ridley Scott and all the work that he did. But the movies that just resound with me were Heat. And to be able to see that man work, because I never did get to see him work. I collected directors for a long time. I don't know if people knew that, but I would try to work with, the Tim Burton, the Jim Cameron, the Paul Thomas Anderson. I just, whether it was scale or not, I needed to collect directors because I wanted to see how they worked and I wanted to learn from them and I wanted to just know. I've done the same thing. Right? But at the end of the day, that's one director who I just think, man, he has it so right, and Heat is that movie. The way that they did the shootout, dude. I mean, of course, Collateral was the same thing, and my friend, Joel Kramer, he did Collateral. So my hat's off to him. Joel. Good for you, man. Fucking good for you. And I would never take the job away from him. But had I been able to do that in my career, I could, die a happy man. I still feel like that's why I always check myself for my keys because I'm like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. It's because I didn't work on Collateral.
Do you ever look back though on movies, think about what it would have been like to work on a John Ford Western?
Oh man, now you're getting into it. Of course,
right? I mean, that's total fantasy.
Listen, 100%. I look back at the days where those guys were making anything from Good, Bad, and the Ugly to the Sergio Leone days to watch how he directed. Yes. I wish I could have worked back on the Ford days. I wish I could have worked back on the Walter Scott day, any of those things.
The problem is we're not all vampires. If we were vampires, we wouldn't have been able to pull that off.
One of the things I loved is when I was just starting as a PA, and I actually got my career starting in Boston and then New York. I loved working with guys who were in their 60s, maybe even their 70s, who were facing retirement, who were then talking to me about having worked with John Wayne and Jimmy. Yeah. I worked with a production designer who worked on a Jimmy Cagney movie, and I loved hearing those stories.
Jimmy Cagney, come on, White Heat,
he's my favorite actor. I love Jimmy Cagney.
Hearing both of you, talking about this, and I have it coming into my head too, and I'm going to skip my favorites because it reminds me, especially working with people like you, Garrett, is that your passion for the industry, your passion for the shot, the contributions that we get to make in a world where when we were kids we were inspired by these things that we were watching and transported to different worlds and in different times, and it is such a joy and a privilege to be able to work where we are and with people, and like you specifically, because of your passion that you bring to things. You're never quiet or bored. You always have great ideas, and it fuels me, and I'm sure the rest of the crew around us when we're in those moments. It is an absolute privilege to be where we are in the time we are here doing what we're doing, because in 20, 30, 40 years from now, I hope that there's a bunch of idiots sitting around a microphone reminiscing about, wouldn't it have been great to work on? And they're talking about our stuff. Right. And I just want to take that moment in time. It's my moment of appreciation for this industry and all that it's given us, and connected, us with people who are brilliant artists in completely different disciplines. And I don't know, I could ramble on forever, but I just wanted to bring that point up while you were here, because I see that in you, and I just appreciate it every time we get to work together.
Myself, not even knowing you, is enjoying that, thinking, God, I would love to work with you.
Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure when you work with people and you talk to people in this industry who have the same regard for what they do as what we do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm, look, not to blow smoke up your ass, you're the same way. No, I'm serious. It's great. No, honestly, I'll tell you right now, guys, to be able to work for Jim Cameron, and likewise for someone like me, it is about the passion. And dude, it really is. It transcends the clock. I don't just, check in and check out. It's always
not a paycheck.
It's always there.
It's leaving an imprint.
Yeah, man. I tell you right now, I tell a lot of people that this is the closest thing to immortality that all of us will experience.
I agree.
Right? It's the thing that our kids will be able to still see, and this will echo.
Do you find yourself sitting through the credits on movies where the movie might have been shot 30 years before you got into the business, just to see the names, to honor the names?
Yeah. I mean, I also just am shaking my head at, damn, what a genius that person was that just did this. You look at some of the stuff that is going on out there. There's a stunt coordinator named Doug Coleman. One of the greatest stunt coordinators that has ever lived, and the world probably doesn't know about him. Mm-hmm. And he actually is a real live magician. He works and, goes over, he's a member of the Magic Castle here in LA. And the things that he does on a movie set is just unbelievable. I'm sitting here going, how'd you do that? And he goes, I can't tell you. And I'm like, fucking magicians. Like other stunt coordinators like, oh, this is how I did it. But Doug has this ability to try to pull off a magic act. I don't know if most people know this at times, but Michael Jackson at one point had to do a halftime show at the Super Bowl, and it was at Coliseum, LA Coliseum, and he hired a magician to come out and have him be able to appear in different spots of the Coliseum without being seen, and then at the end of it get into a jetpack and fly away. But he was smart. He hired a magician, and there's a certain side of magic that is unbelievable, and that comes from the passion. And the fact that you also are like a Doug Coleman, or I am like a Doug Coleman, or Jim is like a Doug Coleman, it's no longer about just trying to do the job and collect a paycheck. It's about us trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and then watch their response. Mm-hmm. And that gives me so much pleasure. That gives me hope. I think one of the most important things, the reason that we are all here, like the meaning of life is hope. If you don't have hope, then you don't want to get up in the morning. You don't want to go to your job. You don't want to do. But if you have hope, and I have hope every time I come to a job that I'm going to do the greatest shot that has ever lived in the history of time. And then there was one time I do this thing for Jim. I was in New Zealand, and it took me 82 takes. It was the whole day. It was one shot, and it killed me. And I'm sitting here shaking my head.
Didn't you get a jersey?
I got a jersey from John Landau. God rest your soul, John Landau. I miss you up there. John Landau bought me a T-shirt that day and had it at the end of the day to present to me that said Garrett Warren, like a jersey, and on the back it said 82 takes. Yep. Mother. But, one of the things I had learned at that time was I said, Jim, this is my whole day. I can't believe I just wasted all this money. And he goes, you didn't waste shit. He goes, you got to understand something. I don't care if that's just 1 second or 3 seconds or 5 seconds. That's going to be the best 1 second in this movie.
Yeah.
And it'll
He goes,
last
you
forever.
treat every shot like that. You understand me? And I was like, yeah, no, I get it. I understand you. I go, the good news for me is that Jim is magic, came up in magic time. He came up in that time where people believed in Santa Claus when they were making movies. You know what I mean? Nowadays, it's all dollars and cents. And we, as a second unit director, are being told, hey, you got to make your day.
Yeah.
He didn't ever consider to make his day. He always considered about making the shot. There you go. And it's the passion of the shot. That is something that you said. And I'm just going to throw it back at you, man. That's what you see, and that's where I get it from, and that's where I love and live in this industry. If I bleed, it's not blood. It's celluloid, and I just fucking dig it, man. It's so cool.
You have been an absolute pleasure today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories and your perspectives. And hey, folks out there, please, if you're listening, watching on YouTube, give us a like, give us a follow, all the things that keep us going. And thanks again for another brilliant episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild.
And mayonnaise. Mustard days.
Yes, absolutely. Get that
Good night,
mustard
Brad.
brand mustard days.